My Inner Knowing, empowering you to find your compass for the journey. We are dedicated to supporting you to rediscover and trust your natural ability to navigate life each day by sharing insight and experience through the lens of two professional communicators and their guests. We intend to prompt internal inquiry that supports all those willing to explore a unique path.
How have you been?
I've been good. I've been good. Yes.
How long have you been back?
I've been back about 3 weeks now.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how is
And
that?
I'm adjusting.
You're
I'm
adjusting.
adjusting. I haven't done much since I've been back. I think I just have given myself time to decompress and to just adjust back to my new environment and new goals, because I had some real serious goals, and now it's like, okay, what does the next chapter look like?
Yeah. So those were goals that you set before you left, hoping that you'd get clear?
Well, they were actually, I looked at a vision board that I did 3 years ago. And before I had ever even visited Morocco, I had Morocco on my vision board, and I had living abroad for a year. Well, I had in my mind a year, but on the vision board, I had, living abroad, also publishing the book, certain travel. And then I looked back at the vision board and I'm like, wow, I did a lot on this board. I need a new board.
I love that. You don't hear people say my vision board was complete very often. So that's really cool.
Yeah, I had like one thing on there that I needed to like move over to the next board, but I did spend some time doing a new vision board, and it was a whole production. I mean, this was not just like a few cutouts. I mean, it was trimmings and I needed pop up this. And so, but I think this is my board for the next 3 years.
Oh, wow. I love that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's so nice. Did you contain it in our typical 2x3 size?
Absolutely. Absolutely not.
Good.
I have a 3-panel, one of these poster boards that you do at an exhibit to,
yes. That's awesome.
No, because I have like different aspects of my life, what I want to learn, where I want to go, what I want to do from a speaking perspective, where do I want to live, fitness. So I have all of these different segments of the board, and then they all tie in together. And I put on a lot of weight. One, before I went to Morocco. And then when I got to Morocco, I thought, oh, yeah, I'm going to lose weight. I didn't. I came back even bigger. Yeah. So now I've hired a personal trainer, and I have on my board that when I get to my ideal weight, that I'm going on a shopping spree. And I have that on the board too.
Nice.
I don't mean a shopping spree like going to Macy's. I'm saying I'm going to Italy.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Dubai.
Oh, that sounds amazing.
Yeah.
Wow. I would never have thought about putting that on a vision board. Going on a shopping spree in Italy.
Oh, it's great.
Yeah.
No, it's very, I'm interested in your process, Linda. And it's just, it's part of what we're all about is how people, know what it is their next steps are going to be, or at least try to get in touch with that. And vision boarding is a way to do it. And it sounds like you either do it intuitively or you've been to some really good, sessions where somebody was like, yeah, this is how you do a vision board. I mean, it could be all your own. Maybe that's you. Can you tell me more?
I think it's me, but it's a friend of mine. We used to do these retreats every quarter, just the two of us. And we did them for years. And each retreat, we would focus on something different. It wasn't necessarily the same things. Like if I were in a place where I needed to switch jobs or do something different in my career, and she had some personal goals, then we would spend time focusing on that. But then we would also spend some individual time like visualizing. And so some of those visualization exercises, then transferred over to doing vision boards. So we never did them together, but we both did our vision boards, just thinking that imagery is just far more powerful than words. And I tend to do plans so I can come up with these really detailed plans, strategic plans and business plans. And I'll do a business plan for my life. And then, then you don't look at it again. So the images just have far more an impact. And so that's why I started to do the vision board. And when I did the last one, it was before COVID. So COVID had some impact on it. But yeah, I looked at it and I was like, yeah, oh wow, I didn't realize you had that place on the board. You went there, so that was So that was nice. So that's one of the things I've done since I've been back from Morocco is actually did do the new vision board for the next chapter of my life.
Wow. I'm so curious, Linda, when you think about, when would you say that you started putting more intention into the choices in your life?
I would say I actually started doing it long ago. And even when I got out of law school, like initially, I was working for the law firms and I was kind of doing what was expected of me. You go to a certain school, everyone that goes to top schools, they look for jobs in top firms, or else they go get, federal clerkships. I mean, your path was pretty much paved for you, what you were going to do. Okay. And I kind of followed the script. But once I got into the law firms, I knew that I did not want to be a partner. And that was really kind of the goal. You got into these large firms. I worked for large firms in New York, and you were supposed to put in all the hours and do everything you needed to do to try to make partner. And I always knew that that was not my goal, that it was really just a temporary stop for me. But I still didn't quite know what, my life was going to look like. And when I started to really start thinking more about that purpose-driven life was as I started to deal with some of the health crisis in my family.
Yeah.
And the first one as an adult was my sister when she was diagnosed with 4th stage lung cancer in both lungs. And I was very close to my sister. And so it was just thinking about that, I wasn't going to grow old with her.
Wow.
And that was something that I really had to deal with. But I was also a part of her care team and was the primary caretaker for her during the time that she was going through her illness, and spending time with her and spending time at her bedside and seeing what she thought was important in life as she was approaching the end of life just really started making me think about kind of that, purpose-driven life. And, I watched her when initially they had said that she would have about 2 weeks to live. We didn't accept that diagnosis. And, we put things in place to myself, her, the family, to really see, how we could prolong her life and still for her to have a quality life. She ended up living another 2.5 years.
Wow.
And, we just really started to redefine things. And then I spent time with her at her bedside 2 weeks. I stayed in the hospital with her for 2 weeks before she passed. And, she had gotten a really nice car and she had a really nice home, and she went back to school and got her master's, and, and she was doing pretty good, saving, and everybody was, very proud of her. And when she was near end of life, none of that was important.
Yeah.
What was most important to her was having her family there. And so that I started to begin to just think about like what was important in life and what are these things that we're, striving for. My brother said to me, oh, you're going to get a lot of blessings for being at the bedside of the sick, which is an Islamic principle that, being at the bedside of the sick is blessings. And I was thinking that these were blessings that I was going to get in the next life.
Oh.
But what I began to understand, what these were blessings that I was getting in this life
Mm.
because it brought me closer to God. It started having me think really about the purpose in life and, why we do what we do, and understanding that all of these material things that we strive for in life, you don't take them with you.
Yeah.
Our belief, I'm Muslim, and as a Muslim, our belief is that the only thing that you take with you are your deeds.
Mm.
And your deeds are the things that you do for people, the relationships, the relationships that you have. Now, that's not saying that you shouldn't enjoy this life and, acquire things, but not at the expense of those relationships. So that was probably the point where I really, really started to just focus on this kind of purpose in my life and having this purpose driven life.
Mm.
And, I mentioned that my girlfriend and I, we had done retreats. We had started doing some retreats before then,
Uh-huh.
but, the things that I wanted to accomplish began to shift.
Mm. And how long ago was that?
That was about 15 years ago.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What a gift, from your sister.
Yes.
It's just touching to me. I don't know if that's the way it is for you, but what a gift in the midst of that tragedy, just to help you find purpose, that deeper sense that you're talking about. It's just beautiful.
Yeah.
Well, and her willingness to be so vulnerable about her truth, right? As opposed to continuing the role, right? Of, as some people do, even as they're sick.
So, Linda, what was your process in, if you can remember, at that point where you're like, there's a different path for my life. I need to find purpose and define it for myself so I can do the goal setting that you're talking about. What was that process for you?
Well, one of the things that was important to me was that I get closer to God. And so that was a principle that, I gathered from that experience, but I also learned from my mother. My mother and I, we were not, the same religion, but, she had a closeness to God. And she went through a lot of things in her life that would have broken most people.
Yeah.
And, she lost 2 husbands, 5 of her children,
Yeah.
a grandchild, and most of her siblings before she left this earth. And one of the things that my mother would constantly say is that, the Lord is not going to give you anything more than you can bear. And I know that it was my mother's connection to God that got her through a lot of things. And, and every time we lost someone, we thought that was going to be the thing that would really be difficult for my mother to get through, particularly since she was aging. When she's losing somebody at 90 and 95 and 100, she lived to be 101. And so I started to feel like it was very important for me to get a closer connection to God. And I started getting more serious about my studying and understanding the religion that I followed. I had been doing meditation probably before then, where I would do my morning meditations, but I would say probably over the last 15 years, I can count the number of days that I missed my meditation in the morning. So my morning ritual is getting up in the morning before sunrise to do the first required prayer. And then I do my meditation. And sometimes the meditation is 5 minutes, sometimes the meditation is 45 minutes, but I always want to take some time to center myself in my world before I begin to approach the world. And because there's a lot of noise in the world, and I wanted to have my quiet moments, and that allows me to be able to filter through the noise. Most of the time I'm pretty successful in getting my prayer and meditation in before, somebody calls. But every now and again, I have a nephew that gets up early who's also Muslim. So he's up for prayer and then he may call me and I'm like, yeah, I didn't do my meditation yet. But, a lot of times I'll answer the phone. So I will sometimes have that, it's not exactly in that order, but I really do try to get prayer and meditation in before I even take a phone call, before I look at emails or text messages.
Mm.
And that has really helped to center me and help me to filter through a lot of the noise. We get a lot of unsolicited advice in life.
Yes.
People have a lot of opinions.
Yes.
And sometimes those opinions are not based on experience.
Yeah.
They just have opinions.
Right.
And we have to be able to, filter through those. And then you get conflicting opinions.
Yes.
So you talk to one friend and they tell you to go left, and another friend to tell you to go right. Someone else tell you, hey, you probably shouldn't move at all. And you still, you got all these, and that's just a lot of noise. So
Yeah.
I try to, do that quietness so that I can kind of listen to myself. If it's something where I really seriously feel like I need guidance, I do prayers for guidance.
Mm. Yeah. Your meditation process, what does that look like?
It varies. It just really depends on, where I am. I don't have one process.
Okay.
I do use an app that I really love, and it's called Insight Timer.
Oh, yeah, yeah. That's great.
Because they have so many different types of meditation. You can just use the timer. You can do it with the music. You can do it with nature sounds. You can have someone guide you through visualization. They even also have some that are Islamic focused, but it just really depends on where I am. Like sometimes I've used meditations like that, power naps in the middle of the day.
Mm-hmm.
If I feel like it's a time where I really need to do some visualization, I may use some of the visualization ones or the affirmations. And sometimes I just do quiet.
Mm.
So it really just depends on where I am. I don't have any like, this is the same thing. Or people say, what kind of meditation do you do? I do all kind of meditation.
Yeah.
It just really depends on where I am.
Yeah. Linda, I like that. I mean, I get it because we're not the same person hour to hour, let alone day to day.
Right.
And what do I need today?
Right.
Where's my focus? How much sleep have I had? What kind of mood am I in? It's no, that's really nice. And I'm glad you brought up Insight Timer because I do think it's a great tool for people. Yeah. Very accessible.
And it's a tool for people of all levels, because sometimes when people want to begin, I will recommend that app because they can find, 5-minute meditations, 10-minute meditations. They can, get the guidance and those that are more experienced with meditation, they may want something different, but you can find that there too, even if it's nothing more than to have the bell go off after, after a certain period of time. So, I find it useful, and I definitely recommend it to a lot of people.
Yeah. Nice.
What do you think some of the better visualization meditations are? Can you think of any that you use? Because I haven't used that, so just interested in a recommendation.
I don't know of anyone's like in particular, like to say, hey, this is the name, go find it, because they got thousands of ones on there, and I do use different ones, but you can have visualizations. They'll have, you can look for visualizations related to just career moves, visualization for a mate you want, the visualization for what you want your next chapter in your life to look like, or so they have all different types. And as I said, it really just depends on where I am that particular day or what my particular needs are. If I'm feeling like, hey, I'm not as much on track as I would like to be, I may do some, visualizations around that. So like before I did my vision board, I definitely did a lot of visualization meditations. Where do I want to live? And sometimes it's not just about visualizing a particular place, it's visualizing how you want to feel.
Mm-hmm.
And
Right.
so a lot of it is not, I'm visualizing that I want to drive a certain car. I may be visualizing how I want to feel when I'm in a car.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, I have thoughts about the experiences that I want in terms of where I live. And, and I've came to the conclusion that I'm going to need more than one home
Mm-hmm.
because of just who I am. There's times where I just need to be centrally located.
Mm-hmm.
I need to be able to get to an airport easily. I don't want to be snowed in. But I also like the water. Now, whether that water is being near an ocean or being near a lake that I can look at, but I also want to be near the water. And that doesn't necessarily mean that that's going to get me near an airport. And so those may be, those may be two different things. Whether it's the having, a home by the shore and having a home in the city, but for a good part of my adult life, I've had more than one place. So I'm also used to moving and having two of everything. Because I've learned that, traveling back and forth, I'm always forgetting something.
Right.
So I start doing all the duplicating, and then I consolidate, and then I have too much stuff. And so and then I go through, what do you need all this stuff for? Like, this is just too much stuff. So but I end up having two of everything because I don't want to move stuff back and forth. So now I've moved everything from Morocco, and I have too much stuff.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah. I like the visualization piece,
Yeah.
and what I appreciated, Linda, when you were talking about how does it feel to live there or to drive that car. One of the things that I was curious about was when you are making a decision, even like in your visualizations, in creating your vision board, is there a certain feeling in your body that you are, I don't know, aware of or look for when you're clear about something, a choice that you're trying to make? Like, how do you know it goes on the vision board?
Some of it is what I've experienced in the past. Like, where were you? What were those moments when you felt the calmest? When you had those happy moments? When you were most productive? And so I may tap into some of that experience, and knowing that that's a feeling that I want to experience, or that I really feel like I need to experience in order to do certain things. So, and some of it is just those things that when I'm visualizing it, I feel a calm,
Mm.
and I feel an ease. Like if I'm trying to visualize, what kind of work I want to do, there are some things that it's just like when I'm thinking about it, I'm like, yeah, I don't think I want to do that.
Yeah.
And other things, it's just that, feeling good about it and feeling like there's some purpose in being able to connect the activities to this higher goal, and what that feels like.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. It makes sense.
No, it's a great process. It's just so holistic,
Mm-hmm.
and you know it, but you don't know it until you go through this process that Linda does. And so I'm okay. I need to come back to vision boarding and do it right.
And
Clarity of intent. How did it feel? What are the emotions? And just tying it all together so that it's very real is what I'm interpreting what you're saying. And I think the last couple of vision boards we've done, I didn't really invest a lot of time into the feeling side of it. And I think it's a huge piece.
Yeah.
I think it is, and I've also learned long ago to not be so specific about how you're going to get someplace.
Mhm.
Because sometimes it's just something that you want to experience or something that you want to feel, and it may not look like you think it's going to look.
Mm-hmm.
So I remember I had said, years ago that I wanted to visit a predominantly Muslim country. I had never visited one before. And I always thought that it would be Morocco.
Mm.
And I was trying to figure out, like, how am I going to get there? How's this whole thing going to happen? And then I met someone that I became very close friends with. And the way I met her was because I was working with the National Wellness Institute. I was on the board and we were having a conference and it was during Ramadan. And so I said, okay, we need a space for prayer. Now, as far as I knew, it was myself and maybe one other Muslim that was going to attend the conference. And they were like, well, we're going to have to pay for that space. And I'm like, yeah, well, you're having a conference during Ramadan. You got to pay for the space. Simple as that. We need a room. And so someone came from Abu Dhabi and I found her and said, are you Muslim? And she said, yes. And I said, okay, well, we have a room for prayer. And then I started saying, these are the accommodations. And she didn't think she was going to have all those accommodations.
Mm.
And we ended up becoming very close friends.
Aww.
And so she said, you should come visit. And that ended up being my first trip.
Wow.
To a Muslim country. And she is one of my best friends.
Oh.
We are like sisters.
Mm.
We have traveled so much together. As a result of my relationship with her, I've visited Abu Dhabi. We've traveled to Uzbekistan together.
Wow.
She helped me arrange a trip to Jordan. She helped me arrange my first trip to Mecca. So I had this goal of just getting to Morocco. And if I had stayed focused on it, that was what I needed to do, and got bogged down in the details of how I was going to make that happen, I don't think I would have been open to this other experience. I don't think this other experience would have come to me.
Wow.
And so not being so fixed on what I was going to do and how I was going to do it opened up a world of possibilities. And it really exceeded, my expectations. Now, I eventually got to Morocco, but I got to Morocco and I went there and moved there. But I moved there with a whole lot of knowledge about the Muslim world.
Yeah.
And so I think it made that transition to Morocco a lot easier. And I got an experience in Morocco that was just unbelievable. So, yeah, I think focusing in on, really what is it that you want to feel as opposed to the specifics is really important, because we don't really know how things are going to unfold for us.
Yeah. Yeah. What are you thinking?
I'm thinking about you and the journey home.
Yeah. Oh, sure. Yeah. I had a retreat center that I opened up. Oh, probably 15 years too early, Linda, in Missouri. I wanted something different, than what we have here. And I was very clear on what I wanted it to be. And it became a wedding venue. And that's not what I wanted it to be. But I wasn't focused. I don't know. Actually, how I think about it is my energy didn't stay with the project, is how I think about it. Once that piece got introduced, the woman running it went that direction, because weddings bring money. And I really wanted it to be a feeling, but my energy it changed. And so it didn't become what I wanted. Now I still hold my retreats there, which is wonderful, but I sold it to someone who wanted to run a wedding venue. Mm-hmm. And so anyway, is that what you were thinking?
Yeah,
about?
no, just you've talked to me for several years now about what Linda's talking about in regards to, I try not to get caught up in the details of exactly every step that I'm going to take to get to this goal that I've set.
Yes.
And I think a lot of us, including me, you get down into those details, as you said, Linda, and then, you are foreclosing opportunities that the universe is throwing your way.
Yeah. Oh, I
it's
agree.
like, hello.
Yeah. That's that was it. Yes, that's what the journey home taught me, was to release the attachment to needing to know the specifics, and just, trusting that the universe knows much more than I do, and that it's holding my highest good. Those are things that I believe. Yeah.
Yes, for sure.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm interested, Linda, coming back to your professional history. You go to one of the Ivy League law schools, University of Pennsylvania, and then you end up at one of the big firms in New York. It's a pretty, from my perspective, from an attorney who went to a Midwestern law school and practices in a relatively small town, it's pretty elite. And to have this experience with your sister and then make decisions that you were talking about, I'm not going for partner in the big firm, even though that is an avenue that's open to me.
Mm-hmm.
It takes a lot of courage to step out of that in a lot of ways from my perspective, and just wondering, because I know the salaries are large at those firms, and it's easy to get caught up in that lifestyle, et cetera, and to come to a point in your life where you're like, you know what, my life's purpose isn't about that necessarily. I'm going a different direction. What was that process for you? Because it's a big deal.
Well, that process happened before my sister, in terms of leaving the law firms. And I started working in healthcare compliance, and that was just a long story how I ended up getting there. It wasn't like a career goal, like, oh, I'm going to do this, but I ended up working with a healthcare company, and then going into compliance. But I started to kind of think about like the difference in terms of what I did when I was working as a lawyer in some of the large firms, and what I did as a compliance officer. And the compliance side just aligned more with who I was. And as working in that environment, it didn't always align with my values. And, as lawyers, you tell clients what they can and cannot do. You guide them from that perspective. As compliance officers, you get to advise people on what they should and should not do, which is, from an ethics standpoint. So within the healthcare organizations, the Office of Inspector General, they don't recommend that you have your compliance officer report to your legal team.
Mm.
And the reason why that is because it's really two different goals. The compliance officers really are supposed to be there to help the organization follow the regulations, and our responsibility also goes to the public good. With lawyers, they are required to kind of keep the secrets. The attorney-client privilege does not permit the lawyers to really say, do any kind of disclosure. You keep the secrets. The client may not be doing necessarily what you think they should do, but that's not your job. The job is to say, is it legal? Sometimes it's finding the loopholes. So I found that the work in the compliance side was a little bit more aligned with who I was and how I wanted to interact with my clients or my employer. So I was working in healthcare compliance in a job when my sister got her diagnosis. Shortly after she passed, I resigned from that position, and I opened up my own business. And that just gave me even more flexibility to be able to pursue the things that I wanted to pursue. It gave me more time to be able to spend with family, because I had more control of my schedule. I was able to, as my mother was starting to get older, I had that flexibility to be able to be there for my mother and support, her needs. So the salary was not important to me. But what I found is that I'm probably making more money now than I was when I was employed, and I have a better lifestyle. But if I had followed the advice of others, I would not have gone down that path. When I said I was going to resign from the company that I was working with, and it was a good job.
Sure.
People said to me, "How are you quitting a well-paying job in a bad economy? Like, this doesn't make sense." Like, it didn't make sense to anyone. And I started to doubt my
Mm.
decision
Yeah.
because wise people was telling me, "Don't do this." And so I talked to my brother and I asked my brother, Hussein, I said, "I don't know what to do because I really feel like, this is time for me to move on. I never intended, to be an employee for this long." And he said to me, he says, "Don't follow the advice of people that don't come from your value system."
Mm-hmm.
And that was really very powerful when he said that to me,
Yeah.
because I started to think about that their life goals may not be the same as mine.
Right.
Don't
Right.
have the same experience. They don't have, the same desires. And so he told me that I should do a prayer for guidance. And then I should follow that guidance. And I asked him, "How will I know?" Like, I don't expect to hear a voice from the sky, like to say, "This is what to do." And he says, "You'll know." He says, "Because that path will become clear for you."
Yeah.
But it meant being quiet and that kind of that listening to that inner voice. So I did that prayer and it became really clear to me that I needed to resign. And so I did.
Yeah.
It was against a lot of advice when I decided to do that. And I had some ups and downs, but I kept saying, "Yeah, you did this prayer for guidance, so this is the path that you're supposed to be on. It may not be happening the way that you want it to happen, but this is the path that you were supposed to be on." And as certain things unfolded in the family, and I had the flexibility and the availability to be able to step in, and if I fast forward to, the traveling that I did and the ability to be able to go to Morocco and live there for 2 years and work remotely, I would have never been able to have those experiences had I not followed that inner voice and followed that guidance.
Yeah.
And so, as I said, I went through times, and there was a couple of times when I thought about taking a job. But one time I was interviewing for a job that I actually thought was a long shot. I didn't reach out to them. A recruiter reached out to me and said, "Hey, there's this great opportunity as a chief compliance officer at this health plan, and the salary was really high." And I mean, it was like, if they give me this job, I'm not turning it down, right? and so, but I thought it was this long shot because I wasn't even trying for it. I had never been, a chief compliance officer before at the time. And so I was down to the last two candidates, and I couldn't believe it. Like, I could not believe like I was on this short list. Right? And so I said, so now I'm starting to get nervous because I'm like, okay, are you going to take this job? So I did prayer and I said, "Listen, if this job is meant for me, and if it's, the prayer is, if it's good for you, me and this life, in my religion and my next life, then make it happen. But if it's not, don't make it available to me because I'm not turning this baby down." I was really clear like that. I wasn't gonna do because, at the time the cash was not flowing and this was, it was a lot of money. And so they didn't give me the offer. And the recruiter said she talked to them and asked them, why, how did they make the decision between me and the other candidate? And they said, because they weren't convinced that I would stay.
Your energy was right out there, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Fascinating. Yeah.
So there were a couple of times when, when I thought about taking jobs right after George Floyd, and we were coming off of COVID, where again, cash was not flowing, and people reached out to me about diversity officer positions.
Yeah.
And I considered a few of them. Some of them I was surprised that, I even got like a second interview because of my conversation. Like I was really clear about what I wanted to do and what I didn't want to do. And I don't think that that probably wasn't a typical interview
Okay.
for them. Like I had a couple of organizations that I talked to that I told them that I just didn't think that they were ready.
Mm,
I didn't think they were serious enough
right.
about this work. I mean, everybody was signing on because that was the thing to do. And people were putting out all of these corporate statements about their commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion. But some of the positions, they weren't high enough positions. There really wasn't a budget around it. It really wasn't significantly tied to their mission.
Mm-hmm.
And so I really felt like if I took these jobs, that I would not really be having an impact.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to do work where I wasn't going to have an impact.
Mm-hmm.
So I did have a couple of times over the last, I guess it's a little over 15 years now, since I resigned. And I did have a couple of times where I thought about employment, but fortunately, I didn't take it or it didn't work out. I've been offered jobs like when I've been gone in as an interim compliance officer, because I go in as an interim a lot of times when organizations are looking for a compliance officer. And so it's like, well, why don't you just take the job? And I'm like, I'm not looking for a job.
Right.
But it's been, you have those moments where you begin to question, like, am I doing the right thing? Am I on the right path? But then when I quiet myself, I say, yes, you're on the right path. And the reason why I know that I'm on the right path is because I ask for the guidance, and this is the path that I've been led on. And so
Mm.
I have to just, I have to just trust that. And I'm glad that I did, because I will comfortably say that I feel like at this point I am definitely living my best life, and living a life that
Lovely.
has purpose.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. When you were speaking, Linda, the thing that I was thinking, to me, they're very connected. It's just that sometimes I think it's harder for people to understand that inner voice or the inner knowing versus, do I trust myself? And what I feel like you're sharing is that you got to this point where you've started to trust yourself and believing that regardless of the choice you make, you're going to be fine. You are capable, you are competent. There's always something else.
My nephew has a saying, he says it very lightly, but it is something that, I think about. He says, in the end, it's going to be okay. If
Right.
it's not okay, it's not the end.
Right.
I like it.
Yeah.
And so, you just got to, sometimes you got to keep pushing. If you're feeling like it's not okay, that's because you're not at the end yet.
Yeah.
This work is not, it's not finished yet. And so, yeah, having confidence. And there's a book that I read, like I'll go through these periods where I read these different types of books. So this
Sure.
is my period where I was reading all of these business books and marketing books. I forgot the author's name, but the book is called The Dip.
Okay.
And one of the things that I took away from that book is that you have to learn to ride the dip.
Mhm.
That most people give up when they're going down.
Yeah.
But if you look at life, it's like a roller coaster,
Mm-hmm.
that you're going to go up and you're going to go down and you're going to reach those dips.
Yeah.
But sometimes when you reach that momentum of going down,
Mm.
you really shoot up. So in business, you got to learn to ride the dip.
Yeah.
You can't give up when you're in the dip.
Yeah.
It's learning how to ride it and have confidence and not second guess, oh, maybe I shouldn't have done this.
Mm. Yeah.
And that particular venture may not even be successful, but it may be preparing you for something else.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
But understanding that this is all a part of the journey.
Mm-hmm.
Because I've had a lot of different businesses.
Mm.
And the different ventures that I've had, I feel like they've all prepared me for something else.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. To me, it's just, it's a powerful way of looking at our experiences, right? No regret. Just what did I learn from that? Inevitably, there is something. Yeah.
Sometimes you don't even realize it may be 10 years later.
Right.
And the other thing, you talk about that kind of inner knowing. And the other thing that, that I focus on or acknowledge is that strategic intuition,
Tell us more.
and strategic intuition is that intuition that's based upon all of your experiences. It's not just something that's kind of, it's out there, but it's a combination between your experiences, whether you're conscious or unconscious, and that intuition that gets you to be able to make decisions in your life that are sound decisions. And so my strategic intuition is based on a lot of different life experiences.
Yes.
So whether I'm actually focused on it or it's in my conscious mind, but it's, that unconscious also comes into play. And so the reason why to turn right as opposed to turning left is because you're seeing all the signs from things that you've experienced in your life.
Yeah.
And oftentimes when I give people advice about things, I'm giving advice not necessarily because, I'm so bright and I've studied all these things. It's because I failed at it. I've already known not to do that. Why? Because I did it and it didn't work. Yes. all of that comes into play. That's a part of that inner knowing.
Yes.
You know that the stove is hot.
Yeah.
Because you put your hand on the stove before and it was hot.
Yeah.
And so you can say, oh, yes, I just innately know. No, because you put your hand on the stove before, even if it was when you were 2 and you don't remember.
Yeah. Your body knows.
Right? But you know not to touch that stove.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of things in life, whether it's certain business deals, whether it's people. Sometimes you meet people and you start to see personality traits.
Yeah.
And you know where this is going.
Yeah.
And it's like, I've had business partners where I've said, I don't think we should work with this client. And they thought I was being judgmental. And I'm like, no, I'm not being I'm saying I'm seeing certain signs.
Yes. Yes.
And then I'm like, okay, well, fine. And then, time goes by and it's like, see, that's why I didn't want to work with the client.
Yeah.
And and it's like, well, how do you know? Well, because I've been in business for a long time.
Yes.
And I've represented clients, from the law firm side. I've seen the way certain things happen. So some of it's my own experience. Some of it is watching trouble.
Yes.
That other people get into. I did bankruptcy work when I was practicing law.
Yes.
So, I'm very conscious of how things could be going fine financially. And then, something happens and it's not so good. I've gone through a lot of the crisis in New York, from the savings and loan crisis.
Yes.
Back in the late 80s and the 90s, the junk bond crisis, more recently, some of the real estate crisis. But you start to see these things and you start to see signs. You see the signs of where something is going. And so you decide, I'm not going to do this. And everybody else might be saying, why? Because it all sounds really good. And I'm like, yeah, so did the savings and loans. So did did those predatory loans. I mean, they look good. And those are also things that help me in my career.
Yeah. Because
I've worked with regulators for so long that I will say, this is not from a compliance officer, this is not a good move, because I know how regulators think.
Yeah.
And that's because I was dealing with regulators in the 90s from the savings and loan crisis. And so now this is just a new set of regulators, but regulators think a certain way. There's certain goals of regulators. Their goal is to protect the public, and they're going to construe things in a way to protect the public.
Yeah.
And so you can say, so a law firm might look at it and say, oh, you can legally do this. And I'm saying you absolutely can,
Right.
but you're still going to have a problem.
Right.
Because you know what? Those regulators are not lawyers, and their goal is to protect the public. And the way you now interpret that law is not in the best interest of the public. And I'm telling you, you're going to have a problem.
Yeah.
Why? Because I've been doing it since the 90s.
Yeah.
So it may seem like, oh, how does she know? How's she predicting these things? I'm not predicting anything. It's based on experience. So it's that experience and having enough of that calm to be able to hear it,
Mm-hmm.
and then having enough confidence to be able to communicate it when everyone else in the room is saying something different.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, Linda, I was thinking this about 5 minutes ago when you were talking, and then to me, you just said it out loud, you know, which is you don't lie to yourself about it. You know, so often we hear something and then we're like, but positive or negative, right? It doesn't matter. But you're like, no, it just is this.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. But I don't know that we often live in that space. I think we're often not. We're thinking of what it could be, or that won't happen to me, or whatever. So, yeah.
Yeah, it will come into play in various aspects of my life. And I know sometimes people think, oh, she's being difficult, or like I have airlines that I won't take.
Yeah.
Not because I took that airline, but because that airline is very similar to another airline that I took, and I already know. So sometimes even when I'm booking my travel,
Mm-hmm.
and I have like, corporate clients booking for me and they want to put me on a flight, that maybe it's $100 cheaper and I got to change planes somewhere. And I'm like, yeah, I'm not going to change planes to save you $100.
Yeah.
Because this is how this is going to happen. If there's a delay,
mm-hmm.
I'm going to be the one to have that's going to impact me.
Right.
Or arriving back home completely exhausted.
Yeah.
Nobody's paying me because I'm resting for 2 days because I was so worn out because of the itinerary,
Yeah.
that you put together. So from experience of having been worn out from those journeys, I'm like, I don't do that anymore.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty firm about it. That I'm not doing that. Well, everybody, this is what we do for well, I'm sorry. I'm not doing it.
Yeah.
Because I already know the potential, the risk of me following what everybody else is doing. It has an impact on your state of mind.
Mm-hmm.
When you arrive someplace frustrated.
Yes.
It has an impact on your health.
Yes.
When you're worn down, your immune system is more compromised. You're going to be more susceptible to various illnesses. So I take in consideration all of those things and saying, nope, something's telling me don't get on that flight. Something's telling me don't change planes there. And it's not just this mysterious inner voice. It is that inner voice that is also being informed by everything that I've observed over the years, whether it's conscious or unconscious.
Yeah, it's reminding you. Yeah.
Yeah.
What are you thinking?
Oh, it was just the ability to set, and I'm kind of switching gears back to what we were talking about, but the ability to set aside and not ruminate over failures and, get stuck in having failed. Well, I think it's common for people to get stuck in those places, and then they're in that loop of, yeah, but I failed, and, just kicking themselves constantly and aren't able to take the next steps, like what you're talking about, where you get this big picture. And I was just wondering, I was thinking about it, have you ever been there?
Yeah, I mean, I think some things you just got to have a sense of humor about as well.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, because sometimes I tell stories and it's like, man, did I ever tell you about the time I tried to do? I really thought that was going to work, And so sometimes it's, having a sense of humor about the things that you do, because sometimes when you're trying to accomplish things that have not been done, then you're doing things in a way that maybe it has not been done before.
Yes.
And sometimes it comes out that that was really brilliant.
Yes.
And other times it was like, what were you thinking? That you actually thought that that was going to work, you know? And so some, you know, some of it is, you know, having a sense of humor at times.
Nice.
Other times is understanding that I go back to, you know, my religious principles that we all are going to be tested. And so life definitely gives you tests. And then also that sometimes what you think is a failure is actually a blessing. That journey that you were on may have actually saved you from something else. So, you know, if you do a business venture and, you know, you lose $100 in that business venture, you learn a lesson that may save you from losing $1,000.
Yes.
You know, you may have been conned by somebody for a small sum of money, and that's a lesson that you learned. And now you don't risk your life savings on the con because you got that lesson. So sometimes those things that we think are failures are actually lessons, blessings, and tests.
Yeah.
And so I also look at that, like, you know, what did that teach me? What was that experience? I know I had a business in New York during the time of 9/11, and the business was at the time extremely successful. And, you know, we were on a nice path of where we were going, expanding, and felt pretty good about, you know, what the future held. But it was also impacting my health. It was taking a lot of energy, and I could see that it was having a negative impact on my health. 9/11 happened, and the business collapsed almost overnight. And, you know, when that happened, it seemed like, you know, this is such horrible luck. You know, we were on a good path. Can't believe this happened. But maybe it needed to happen, because if I had stayed on that path, you know, in terms of the business, not 9/11, but the business failing. But if I had stayed on that path, you know, it could have really negatively impacted my health. I don't know what that path would have brought me.
Yeah.
So I accepted that that was not the path that I was supposed to be on. So sometimes it's light, you know, I'm light about it. Sometimes it's more, you know, getting really spiritually connected to this was, you know, this was not my journey, and understanding that, and then just being able to say, okay, you know, what does the next chapter look like? I remember in one of my transitions, my family was actually quite worried about me. My sister was calling my other sister, my brother was like, oh, she's not doing anything. You know, she always had a lot of get up and go. I don't know what she's doing. She's just sitting in the room. And I'm like, leave me alone. Would you please leave me alone? But what they didn't understand was that I was visualizing. You know, I was planning. I didn't want to move until I knew where I was moving to and how I wanted to move.
Yeah.
And so I was really quiet. And it was just a few weeks. It wasn't like it was, you know, like 6 months I couldn't get out of bed. It was just like a couple of weeks. I was just quiet. But nobody was used to me sitting still.
Yeah.
And so they thought that this was a problem. They were calling each other. They worried. I'm worried. And I'm like, you guys need to really leave me alone. And I'm like, what are you calling them and telling them all of this stuff for? You know? And she's like, well, we're not used. I mean, there was phone calls happening. And I was planning.
Yeah.
And, you know, and I came up with a plan on how I wanted to move and just visualizing what I wanted.
Yeah.
And I tend to do that. I tend to stop and be quiet. I moved into a new house and my sister was helping me get things together. And I was sitting in the middle of the living room in a chair, like where I had moved the furniture in. And I was sitting in the middle of the living room in a chair. And my sister was doing, so she was helping me paint. She was busy. And she didn't appreciate this at all. She was busy as a bee. And I'm sitting there in the middle of the living room in a chair. And she's saying, what are you doing? Like, you need to help. And I'm like, she's like, you're not doing anything. I said, I am doing something. You just can't see what I'm doing.
Yes. Yes.
But I wanted to understand how I wanted to use the space.
Yes. Yeah.
And that I needed to sit there and I needed to feel the space
Yes.
because I didn't want to like start moving things in and doing things and not understanding how I wanted to feel in the space.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I finally got up out the chair, I had a plan. I knew what I wanted and how I wanted. But she couldn't understand why I was sitting in the chair.
Yeah.
But so I will sit, I will sit for a while. I will be quiet. I won't move. Everybody else will say, "What are you doing? What are you working on?" I'm like, "We're not working on anything." but I am working.
Yeah.
Yes, I am working.
Yeah.
I'm quiet.
I hear you. Very similar for me.
So much insight. I really appreciate it. Yeah, inspiring. Just how you live.
Mm-hmm.
So much intention and vulnerability and wisdom. It's seriously, it's really great. Thank you so much.
Yeah, the biggest experience that I had in terms of that exploration insight was when I worked on my book.
Mm.
Writing that, and Teresa, I know you said you've gotten through a good amount of it.
Yeah.
But it really did require me to just reflect on my whole life.
Yes.
And to really think about even from childhood, those experiences and what impact those experiences had on who I am.
Yes.
And it was really a very good exercise for me because I had to really think about and be quiet and just, relive things and understand like, how did I get there? What influenced what was happening? What happened in terms of certain transitions? And it was just a really insightful experience for me. And I used to journal a lot. I don't journal as much anymore, but for years I journaled. Every night I would, write in my journal, and that was my opportunity to be with my own thoughts and, without it being censored.
Mm.
And I kind of took the same approach when I did the book. I didn't want it to be censored. So I didn't actually let anybody read it before I put it out.
Yeah. Wow.
Because I felt that if I let people read it, that I would get too many of opinions,
Yes.
and it would no longer be my true expression.
Yeah.
Whether it was people giving an opinion that maybe, because every chapter starts with some quote from the Quran and how I interpret that.
Right.
Whether it was a scholar telling me that I had the interpretation wrong, and I wasn't asserting it for the truth of it, but really of how it impacted me.
Yeah.
And so I didn't want somebody else telling me how I should be interpreting it. And maybe that's in the second edition, but I was really talking about how I actually interpreted it, and not how somebody said I should have interpreted it.
Yeah.
Also, I didn't want, people telling me, you sure you want to say that?
Right.
What impact is that going to have on your clients?
Right.
Is that going to affect your business if you say it like that? Are people going? So I wouldn't let anybody read it.
Yeah.
And so that was really that, being able to listen to that inner voice, be able to put it down on paper, and to not have it censored. So that was one of my goals on the vision board that I did 3 years ago. I had a couple of different book topics that I wanted to work on, but this was one of them, is to be able to kind of tell my journey. And I was glad that I was able to find the quiet time to be able to do that and to not have my words censored.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so easy for me, Linda, to, I don't know, visualize you doing that, having read as much of the book as I have, because it is like every chapter is its own story. And so, yeah, I can see you. I know this probably wasn't it, but sitting in the chair, in the room, like, okay, what story am I telling here? How does this feel? And then relaying that. No, it's very, very easy to visualize.
And a part of it, I wrote a good amount of it in Morocco. And particularly when I was getting to the end of writing it, I've rented a place
Mhm.
across from one of the most famous mosques in the world. Hasan II is considered one of the great masjids of the world. It's also called the Mosque on the Water because it's right on the water. So I was there with this majestic building, listening to the call to prayer, also looking at the ocean because I love the water
Wow.
and
Yeah.
hearing the waves. And I was in an Airbnb and I basically rearranged the furniture in the Airbnb. And initially I was sitting like in a dining room chair working. And I said, this is not going to work. So I asked them if they had an office chair, because otherwise I was going to go buy one, even
Yeah.
if I just had to leave it there. Because I said I need a proper chair. So they got me a chair and I rearranged the furniture to put, the desk in front of the window.
Mm.
And then I had these panels that I put on my laptop so that I had 3 panels.
Oh,
Like
okay.
it's
Sure.
expand the different screens. And so I was able to kind of have like write and then have a page where I was maybe, researching certain things. And so I had, this setup in this space, but I felt like I needed to create this environment in order for the writing to flow the
Mm.
way that I wanted it to flow, that I could have this time where I was spending time by myself and I was experiencing the beauty
Mm.
that was outside of my window.
Wow.
And for me, one of the reasons why I like the ocean is because it's the vastness of it. That when you're looking at the ocean, there's nothing that obstructs that view,
Yeah.
that it's just endless. It looks like it's endless.
Mm.
And it just reminds me of the vastness of the world and that we are such a small part of it individually, but yet it's all connected.
Yes.
So being in that environment was really important for me to be able to do like those final chapters and to go back and do the edit of the book,
Mm.
sitting in that space.
Mm. Yeah, that sounds amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. Good for you for just creating the environment you needed. Yeah. Listening to yourself. Yeah. It's lovely.
Yeah.
Well, Linda, I know that we are at time. Any other thoughts or anything that you wanted to share with people today?
I guess if I were to give people any kind of advice, it's just understanding that listening to that inner voice is really a journey. And, for those that are just, starting out in that process, to understand that it's a journey and to share a couple of mantras that I have.
Mm.
One is, I mentioned earlier, to center yourself in your own world before you enter the world. And that is really important because if you don't have a sense of who you are, what you believe, and
Mm.
what you value, it's very easy for other people to tell you who you are,
Yes.
what you should value, who you should be. And there's a lot of noise out there. So taking that quiet time to really center yourself, I think, is important. And being still, that is what's going to guide you through a lot of the noise that's out there.
Mm-hmm.
And the last thing I would say is, to really move with purpose and to be guided by, your faith and your intuition. And
Yeah.
so sometimes it takes a little bit of practice, but it's really being able to trust that inner voice. And the way to get there is that stillness and quiet. And if
Mm.
that means starting out with 5 minutes of quiet, start out with 5 minutes of quiet. Some
Yeah.
people won't be able to sit still for 30 minutes, but work if it's 2 minutes and work your way up till you can find more quiet time.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. Good guidance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's great.
Yeah. Thank you so
And
much.
of course, I would say read my book.
Yeah, absolutely.
Of course.
Absolutely.
Yes,
Well, tell them where they can get your book, what's the best place to order it, and everything about your book.
Well, the book is called Crescent Over Crossroads.
Yes.
And the author title is Fatima Linda Howard. It's available on Amazon. And anybody who's interested in reaching me, or looking at any of my other social media, it's very easy. Just think about being on this journey with me. And so it's withlindahoward.com is my website. My handle on social media is with Linda Howard. And the book is on Amazon, Fatima Linda Howard, Crescent Over Crossroads. So I hope to hear from some of your audience that, they can reach out to me. Also, the email is engage@withlindahoward.com.
Yeah. Thank you for explaining the with Linda Howard, because I noticed it, obviously, but I appreciate the journey part of that. That's really nice. Yeah.
Yeah. And it came into play with different aspects. Like for the book, I wanted people to go on a journey with me. And that was how I wrote it. In my professional work as a compliance officer, as a DEI professional, I don't believe that I come in and direct people what to do. It's about building things together. And so it's working with me and not having me come in and direct and design, because I don't have all the answers. The work that I do with my clients is very customized. And so it's about working together.
Yeah.
And so that's why I came up with the name for my business, With Linda Howard. That, we're on the journey together.
I love it.
Yeah.
Thank you, Linda. Yeah.
And thank you both so much for inviting me on your podcast. This has been lovely. I've enjoyed it, and it's just been a great experience.
Oh, thank you,
Thanks.
Linda. Thank you for joining us today. We are excited to explore life with you. We encourage curiosity, self-growth, and we strive to be more compassionate every day.